Hi, I'm Jamie from TST Prep. Thanks for watching today. Over the course of the last 2 months, I've had the privilege to share some videos with you on YouTube through TST Prep, trying to share some strategies and advice specifically for TOEFL speaking. My colleagues and I at TST Prep have enjoyed sharing this material with you to help you on your TOEFL journey. Today, I want to focus on some strategies and tips from a TOEFL professional. I'd like to think that in my 19 years of teaching experience, the majority of that having worked with ESL students, and in my last several years working at TST Prep, I've gained some insights and knowledge that I can share with you to help you get your TOEFL score as quickly and easily as possible. So why don't we jump right in and check out the material today. All right, so again, today is going to focus on 10 speaking tips or studying tips for success from a TOEFL professional. My name is Jamie. Again, I work at TST Prep, where I offer the TOEFL speaking evaluations, TOEFL speaking group classes, and TOEFL speaking private lessons. Today, I hope that we can accomplish that I can share with you ways in which you can study to save time, maintain motivation, and improve your score. Besides that, I want to show you how you can experiment with different resources to maximize the amount of information you can learn, remember, and apply on the test day. Right now, I want to draw your attention to a great product that we offer at TST Prep. That's known as the TOEFL Emergency Course. This is a course designed as a self-study program. So you, on your own free time, in accordance with your schedule, can master the TOEFL exam as quickly and easily as possible. In fact, there's various versions of the TOEFL emergency course, but the basic idea is that it's designed for students who have about 5 hours to prepare for the TOEFL exam, or there's slightly more detailed versions. Maybe you have 3 days to prepare or 1 week to prepare. You know, when you're in that crunch time, that period right before the exam, you don't want to get overwhelmed with, a 500-page TOEFL book or just loads of TOEFL websites and YouTube videos. This emergency course will focus on the best piece of advice to help you be successful in all 4 sections. So I think it's a great fit for so many students out there. Check out our website, tstprep.com, and see what the emergency course offers for you. Recently I got an opportunity to meet with Nadia, a pharmacist. And in fact, we met for a 30-minute speaking evaluation. This meeting proved to be really a positive experience for Nadia. So I want to share her thoughts. She quotes, "The speaking evaluation was one-to-one class in the comfort of my own home. Jamie was able to make me relax, pointed out my weaknesses, and gave advice on how to approach every question. The follow-up email and recordings were super helpful too." So that's another option out there. Check out tstprep.com. You can buy a private 30-minute speaking evaluation and get the same positive experience that Nadia had. So let's go ahead and focus on these 10 tips that will hopefully be key to your success. TOEFL tip number 1, stop watching so many YouTube videos. So we know that there's tons of information out there on YouTube, and some of it can be useful, but some of it not so much. And it's really overwhelming for you to try to determine which advice is helpful, which advice is best when you're just swimming through a sea of videos. Well, check out this grid here, this graph. Look at how your time allocated spent watching videos versus practice speaking, how much more useful the actual practice of speaking. Let's face it, watching videos is a really passive activity. Perhaps while you're watching, you're sort of, zoning in and out. Your attention is sort of wavering. Maybe you're taking down some notes. Maybe you're, multitasking on your phone or something. The fact is you're not actually doing the thing that you need to do to be successful. The way for you to be most successful is not through watching videos, but by actually doing and using the skills that are critical for TOEFL success. So that comes through practice. In English, we say practice makes perfect, and it couldn't be more true. You've got to actually throw yourself in and practice TOEFL speaking. So some things that you can do to lead up to this, immerse yourself in English as much as possible. Try to binge watch Netflix TV shows, try to watch American movies, listen to TED Talks, listen to podcasts. Try to, speak aloud, practice summarizing things aloud. Perhaps you want to participate in something called like a 30-day speaking challenge. Google that and see if there's a program that would fit well for you. But the reality is to force yourself to speak English as much as possible to work on developing your English speaking abilities. And that's not best accomplished through passively watching YouTube videos. So hopefully by listening to some advice, you're going to be able to assess your own speaking strengths and weaknesses. You can speak English in a more natural style. You can study in a way that keeps you focused and motivated. You'll be able to answer TOEFL speaking questions with more confidence, and you'll be able to find a support system that helps you achieve your score. So let's move on to tip number 2, record your own voice. So I'll be totally honest with you. When I listen back to some of these YouTube videos, I'm like, oh gosh, do I really sound like that? It's awkward and uncomfortable to listen to your own voice. This is true for everybody, but it's really, really impossible to analyze your own speaking without listening back to your recordings. So I am absolutely glued to my iPhone here. Every time I work with my TOEFL students, I'm always making voice recordings. I send them recordings after every lesson. And obviously I listen back to these recordings, I analyze them to make sure that they've accomplished what I hope to set out to. So the only way to, really analyze your response, the first critical piece is to record your own voice. You've got to get in the habit of listening to your response and analyzing for certain, specific criteria. So here's a little insight. When you hear your recorded voice, it usually sounds higher than you expect. Now, this is something that I often address with TOEFL students because sometimes I meet students who sort of have an unusually high speaking voice, and I just think that sometimes it can record sort of awkwardly. It's really important that you hold your voice at sort of one level tone. And in general, English speakers produce sounds and letters inside of their chests. In fact, while I'm speaking, if I put my hand here on my chest, I can feel all of the vibration. I'm not producing any sounds in my face or in my nose. It's produced in my chest. And I don't have a particularly high speaking voice. Obviously, that sounds silly and unnatural. It's sort of like a cartoon character or an animated voice. It's important that the quality or tone of your voice is sort of typical sounding, nothing really, really strange or unusual. So when you're listening to your recording, try to listen to be sure that you have sort of just a level, typical tone and that your voice isn't constantly going up and down, but sort of remaining continuous throughout the response. TOEFL speaking tip number 3, use a grading rubric to analyze your response. So I actually just put a video out on YouTube last week about this. I went into great detail about how you can best self-analyze your response. So I won't talk about it super deeply here, but obviously the first step is to record your voice. Then you listen back to your recording and okay, now what? Was it good? Was it bad? Obviously those are not very descriptive sort of grading criteria. Oh man, I think my response was really bad. That's not very helpful. You've got to be focusing on specific criteria that can help you learn and progress. So here's an example checklist that you can always use to monitor yourself. So if you're doing an integrated speaking question, such as TOEFL speaking question 2, 3, or 4, you've got to be sure that you're filling just about all the time they give you. So you have 60 seconds to speak. You want to be sure that you're speaking for 57, 58, 59 seconds. You never want to leave significant time of silence left on the clock. You want to use all the time you're given. Was my introduction 15 seconds or less? So yeah, I mean, I don't usually compartmentalize my answer with like time chunks, like, okay, 12 seconds for the introduction, and then 40 seconds for my body, and then, 8 seconds for the conclusion. My brain just doesn't work that way. But the general guideline is that your introduction should be short and sweet. Okay? Your goal is you have a lot of content and you want to get into the main content as quickly as possible. So keep the introduction brief. Did I have enough time to include a short conclusion? Students ask me this all the time. Jamie, do I have to put in a conclusion? Like sometimes I just can't. Is that okay? Well, I don't want to say like, no, that's disastrous, but the goal is to try to include a conclusion each time. That's always my intention. Even for me, a TOEFL professional, it doesn't always work out perfectly as planned. But as I go through my response, the plan is for me to have a conclusion. And of course, I have sort of a predetermined conclusion planned in my mind. I know approximately how long it takes me to say that conclusion. So I know when I intend to start that conclusion. And I also sort of have my emergency situation, which is that when I only have a few seconds left on the clock, I have something that I say rather short and sweet to wrap up my response. Let's talk about timing. Did I look at the clock to monitor my time at least twice? So I know watching that clock tick down towards 0 can cause a lot of stress and anxiety. But the clock needs to become sort of an effective tool for you. If you never look at it, well, then you're always going to be surprised when suddenly the time expires. You've got to get comfortable glancing at the clock while you're speaking and use that as a guide to monitor your response. For instance, let's talk about TOEFL speaking question number 4. In this question, we typically have a main theme, and then we typically have a subtopic that's supported with an example, a second subtopic, again, that's supported with an example, and a conclusion. So my goal in TOEFL speaking question number 4 is to introduce my topic very briefly. I typically use a phrase like, this lecture explores 2 TWO, and then I introduce the main topic or theory, something like, this lecture explores 2 really interesting theories about human aggression. Now in my next sentence, I'm going to get immediately into that first theory. I'm going to spend approximately 3 sentences describing the theory with an example or the details to support it. Then I'm going to transition to this next subtopic. Again, I'll spend approximately 3 sentences introducing that second subtopic with the example or details to support it. And lastly, I'm going to throw in my conclusion. So, in all logic, I've got the introduction, the first subtopic. Well, at approximately the 30-second mark, I should be transitioning to that second subtopic conclusion so that I can have a really well-balanced response. Well, the only thing, that can help me guide is the clock. I'm watching the clock so that I don't spend way too much time on the first subtopic. That's going to give me an indicator of, okay, got to move on. So I'm always looking at that clock while I'm talking. Another point of the criteria here, did I include at least 2 transitional words or phrases? Your TOEFL responses need structure and organization. Now, this is where working with a TOEFL professional can really be helpful. All the time I hear students use transitional words like, My first reason is, my second reason is, and these are not particularly effective. They're very, very rigid and robotic. So, you want to be sure that you're using language that's natural, conversational, and cool. And yeah, having good structure and organization can be accomplished in a more natural way. Criteria number 6, did I speak at a smooth and even pace for the majority of my response? The reality is, if you're aiming for 26 or higher, you need to be able to speak continuously with absolutely few to no utterances or word fillers like eh, or any lengthy pauses or hesitations. The pace of speech cannot be turtle-like slow, but it also can't be as fast as possible. It needs to be just nice, natural, and continuous. And notice it has to be even. Sometimes students have inconsistent pace. Like they'll speak nice and naturally, and then there'll be some pauses. And then again, some nice natural rhythm, and then more hesitation. So it's got to be consistent. Criteria 7, did I speak in a natural and conversational tone? No robot voice. This is a tough one. Quite often, students come across as robotic. Lots of times, students feel nervous. Perhaps they've never really studied English intonation, the music and rhythm. And that robot voice is not effective at all. So there's got to be that proper music and rhythm to English. Students ask me all the time, Jamie, how do I study or how do I practice English intonation? Yeah, there's certainly some resources out there, but the best thing is to work with a professional because that's going to provide you the most feedback and absolutely identify and pinpoint the intonation areas where you're struggling the most. The last key criteria in your self-analysis checklist. Did I include all the essential information from the reading and listening? Okay? Essential information. It's tough, guys. You've got to identify what are the key points that you want to summarize. Keep in mind these conversations and lectures could be 2 minutes or longer. So you only have 60 seconds to summarize. It's critical that you're zoning in on the key points and that you're including that critical information in your summary. So after you record your voice, you would use a tool like the self-analysis checklist to ensure that you are doing the proper things in your response. TOEFL speaking tip number 4, find a study buddy. Let's be honest, studying for TOEFL is boring. I can't imagine spending hours at my desk by myself every day, practicing, analyzing, again and again and again, these TOEFL questions. I think you need to spice it up sometimes. You've got to mix it up, and working collaboratively with another TOEFL student can make the experience a lot more enjoyable. Now, we actually have some guidance for you to find that study buddy. So we've got a TST Prep Facebook page. So this is a great resource for you because it's an entire community of people who are in your same boat, meaning they're also seeking TOEFL advice and guidance. So you can reach out. It's totally cool and fair to put a post out there. And perhaps you want to describe what kind of partner you're seeking. Maybe you want to share, if you have an idea of your current speaking level or perhaps the goal you're aiming to achieve, so that perhaps you can find a student who is, again, in the same position as you, maybe of a similar level or maybe a little bit higher than you, so that you guys can work collaboratively and learn and grow from one another. So it's a great opportunity. You can put out there your time zone and see if you can connect with someone who can, who wants to work together with you. I teach TOEFL group classes, and in my group classes, I'm always encouraging the students to practice together outside of the class time. And quite often they take it, they take advantage of that. And students have actually formed friendships that have lasted beyond our classroom and have in turn helped them study in a much more enjoyable and productive way. TOEFL speaking tip number 5. Move your hands when you speak. I'm the queen of doing this. I'm super expressive when I talk. And granted, the TOEFL speaking rater can't see you when you're speaking, but that doesn't mean that you don't want to connect emotionally. And for me, I most naturally connect emotionally when I'm using hand gestures. So yeah, when I want to sound happy, I typically am using my hands and I'm speaking with a smile and I'm adding that extra feeling and emotion into the sound of my voice. If I experience a disagreement situation, or, I personally disagree and I want to express some frustration or some disappointment, again, I'm going to, lower my voice to have a tone that matches my words. And I'm probably even going to do some things like this, like, I totally disagree with this statement. Again, I'm using hand gestures that support my feelings. For me, that definitely helps to connect emotionally. Try it out. See if you can add some feeling and emotion by supporting your language with some nonverbal cues. We're moving right along here, folks. TOEFL speaking tip number 6. Pick the right time and place to study. This is a tough one. I know many TOEFL students are juggling a lot. Perhaps you also have a full-time job. On top of that, you might have responsibilities relating to family, a spouse, kids to take care of, meals to cook, grocery shopping, laundry. The list is endless. However, improvement doesn't happen overnight. Like, it takes time and effort to make improvement. So studying is a critical component for your success. And picking the right time and place to study is going to be really important. So I think it varies from person to person. You've got to know what works best for you. And it's really best if you can carve out time, like make a calendar, make a commitment, and find a consistent time that you can devote to your TOEFL preparation. A pro tip: study in the morning. At night, you're too tired to focus. All right, maybe there's the rare exception out there. Perhaps some of you younger folks are night owls. You like to be awake at night. You're really experienced cramming, studying for your exams at the last minute at like midnight. You say you're burning the midnight oil. You're up all hours of the night. Maybe that works for you. But for most people, you can focus the best when you're well rested, and that's typically early in the morning. So even if it means setting your alarm clock an hour earlier than you typically wake up, it might be worthwhile. It might be worthwhile to wake up, perhaps grab a cup of coffee, put some food in your belly, and get to it. Start studying. If I were in this position, I think my best option would be to do something early in the morning, before my kids are awake, before my mom duties and other responsibilities kick in. I know if I wait until late in the evening and I think, oh yeah, I'm going to study tonight. You want to know what's going to happen? I'm going to sit down with my favorite reality TV program and I'm going to say, oh man, wasn't I supposed to study? Oh, but I'm too tired now. And this TV show is so good. I did so much today. I deserve to relax. So I think if you, really look critically at yourself and your habits, and you can set the time aside to really commit to studying in the right environment, in a place where you can focus and not be, overly distracted, that's going to be critical for your success. TOEFL speaking tip number 7, start the same way for each question type every time. Okay, so this relates to TOEFL speaking templates. I'm a big fan of templates. I'm a believer, I use them. I think it's really, really helpful to have a game plan, a predetermined game plan. When I sit down for TOEFL question number 1, I have no idea what topic or theme is going to jump up onto that screen. But I know for sure that I know exactly how I'm going to begin my response. I personally know the transitional words that I'm going to use to organize my response, and I've already got that conclusion planned. Having that predetermined structure can really help me feel more empowered and more in control of my TOEFL response. Now, it's not advisable to repeat anything on TOEFL. So if I have this really clever, cool introduction for TOEFL question number 1, I'm only using that one time. I'm certainly not going to repeat it and have the same pre-memorized style for all 4 questions. All of my templates are unique. So let's take a look at some introductory phrases that can be appropriate ways to begin your TOEFL responses. So TOEFL question number 1, it could be something so simple as, I think, I feel, I believe. Remember, in this question, you always have to give your preference or your opinion. So those phrases are perfectly appropriate every time. I might pick something like personally speaking, or to be honest, or even something sort of natural and reflective. I've never thought about that before, but, or I have to say that, okay? So one of those phrases could become your go-to introduction, and you could use this every time you practice TOEFL speaking question number 1. And that way you know exactly how you're going to begin your response without any stress or worries. How about question number 2? Remember, this one is that campus announcement or a student proposal. And your job is to briefly summarize the announcement. So for me personally, I typically begin with a phrase like, according to the announcement, or perhaps if there's a proposal and they include the writer's name, I might say something like, Sam Smith proposes that the university should. And I typically begin in that style. I briefly summarize the announcement. Then when I want to transition to the listening part, I might use a transitional phrase like, right off the bat, the man, oh, this is a negative one. Right off the bat, the man says that he doesn't like the new campus decision, something like that. Right off the bat is an idiomatic expression, meaning immediately or right away. And using idioms can be an effective way to help you sound more natural and native-like. Or I could, maybe you don't feel super comfortable with this right off the bat phrase. Maybe it's new and just a little bit awkward for you. So try something else. The woman is perfectly fine with the campus decision. Or the man isn't crazy about Sam's proposal. Or it looks like there's a change on the university campus. You see, students will no longer use traditional textbooks. They now will have to download an e-reader, something like that. Question number 3, everybody's dreaded question, the academic reading and the lecture. So for me, I typically begin my response by providing a definition of the main term. So I might say something like, so basically, integrated farming is, and then I'm going to give a definition of that term. Or I could use something that's listed here, something like, one interesting thing I learned from the reading is that, and perhaps explain integrated farming that way. The reading passage goes into detail about integrated farming, which is, okay, so I can bring my definition in that way. Then when I transition to that listening, the professor provides a crystal clear example of this. Crystal clear, a really good example, strong example. I'd put a lot of stress and emphasis onto those key words. That brings us to TOEFL question number 4. Again, in this situation, we've got a lot of content, so I like a brief introduction. I had never heard of this topic until now, but it's kind of interesting. Basically, the professor talks about human aggression, and he provides two theories, something like that. In the lecture, the professor discusses human aggression, and he provides two theories. Okay, so those could work. Have that introductory phrase pre-memorized, predetermined to help yourself feel, okay, I got this. I know how I'm going to begin. TOEFL speaking question or tip number 8, use a timer. Yeah, I know a lot of students view the clock as their enemy. Well, the only way to embrace or become friends with your clock is to get accustomed to it. Okay? The reality is you only have 45 seconds to speak, or you only have 60 seconds to speak. So if you're practicing TOEFL speaking question number 1, and you're talking for a minute and a half, and you listen back, you're like, wow, my response was awesome. I had great details and lots of examples. Well, in reality, it wasn't awesome because you talked for double the time that you're allotted. So that's why it is really critical that you're watching the clock tick down, just like you would on the exam. So for me personally, I typically use an online stopwatch. That way I'm looking up at the computer screen just like I would be on the day of the TOEFL exam, and I'm watching that clock tick down to 0. I also believe that in watching the clock, in timing yourself consistently, you are gonna, develop that inner clock. You're gonna get a sense of what 45 or 60 seconds feels like and how many words and details you typically can include in that time frame. So let's try to get back in the power seat. Let's get in control. Go, in the driver's seat. You're in control. The clock is not your enemy. The clock is just giving you sort of, it's giving you guidelines for how you should structure and tackle your response. And you're going to be okay with that clock if you can get comfortable and used to it. So let's move on here to TOEFL speaking tip number 9. Take advantage of technology to provide you with feedback on your speaking. So yeah, you listen to your response and you're trying to analyze it with the checklist, but maybe you're hearing some pronunciation issues. Pronunciation is important. The more natural and native-like you sound, the better your performance will be on TOEFL. So perhaps you've identified certain letters or sounds or words that you're struggling to pronounce. Well, that's where something like a voice typing software, this can actually have a lot of benefits, not just pronunciation. At TST Prep, we often talk about Google Docs because they have a voice recording software. But I know there's other voice recording softwares out there. But basically the concept is instead of just recording your voice, you would use a voice recording software. The idea is that you would speak aloud your TOEFL response, and the computer would be capturing your words and sentences and writing you a transcription. Now, I can see a lot of benefits to that. First of all, it's going to sort of give you feedback as to how good your pronunciation is, because if the computer software is having a lot of trouble understanding your words, it's going to, show that. It's going to type, we say gibberish, like sort of nonsense words. If it can't clearly understand what you're saying, you're going to visually see that. Oh, wow, I must not have pronounced that very well because the computer had no idea what I just said. Another benefit of voice typing is that it's going to give you a visual representation of your response. A lot of students are concerned about word count. Did I include a lot of, or a good amount of words? And that relates to sort of your speaking pace. Now, don't quote me here. I always forget this. But I think for question number 1, we advise, I'm going to say about 120 words in your response. And for the integrated questions 2 through 4, I'm going to say about 150 words. Well, obviously, you know, you don't want to count the individual words after you record your voice. But if you've got a transcript, you can really easily get a word count, and that's going to give you feedback. You know, if you've only got 70 or 80 words in your response to question number 1, the odds are you're speaking too slowly, or there's too many pauses and hesitations. And then one more benefit that sort of jumps out at me is, you know, I'm a visual person. So for me, I like to sort of look at my response visually, and I can analyze it. You know, did I include good details? Do I have transitional words? You know, are my responses well structured? Am I, you know, developing my content? Am I including critical details and information? So I like to look that over visually. All right, voice typing software. Another good resource for you, and this one is particularly cool with pronunciation, that's Youglish. So Youglish is a cool site because you can type in any word or even a phrase, and immediately Youglish is going to provide you with tens of thousands of examples of native speakers saying this exact word or phrase from TED Talks or news clips. Let's actually look at what this looks like. So I'm going to go to youglish.com, if I can type well here, youglish.com. And for me, I typically like to click on US so that I can hear American pronunciations. But I'm going to type a word like disagree. This is a tough word for a lot of students to pronounce. And
we have to remember,
immediately, Youglish is going to give me 8,664 examples of native speakers saying this phrase. So I can listen to these phrases, I can pause them, I can slow them down, I can repeat them, but I'm going to try to mimic or shadow the native speaker's pronunciation of this particular word that I know I'm struggling with. Let's listen for a moment.
That we need people who disagree with us because they're
that you never disagree with. If you want, you can go find people either online or
troubled world. I couldn't disagree more.
Okay. So, okay.
We have to
cool resource, right? And it's also true with a phrase. Now, a phrase might not generate as many, 8,000 some responses. But earlier I mentioned that idiomatic expression right off the bat. So I get only 1,100 examples here, but that's still plenty. I could listen to native speakers saying this phrase.
You actually have a chance to win right off the bat. Anybody can do pretty good at it.
Well, we don't surrender to fear, I'll tell you right off the bat. And we respond to do right off the bat. The other thing.
Okay, so cool resource where you can listen to the pronunciation from native speakers of some words that you might be struggling with. Youglish.com. Check it out. All right, guys, here's a clip of what that, Youglish looks like. So if you want to work on the word battery, you could certainly practice that, through Youglish. So let's wrap things up here. We made it. TOEFL speaking tip number 10. I promised you 10. Here we are. You might be listening to me talk, yada, 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 blah, 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 Jamie. Yeah, you make it sound so easy. The reality is the best way to get your TOEFL goal score quickly and easily as possible is with professional help. It's an investment, but it's absolutely worth it. Invest in helping yourself reach your goal. Get professional support from an experienced teacher. Taking the exam repeatedly and falling short of your goal score is expensive. And we say it's money thrown out the window. Investing in your personal progress and growth is, a much wiser decision. Self-analyzing can be useful, but it also can be difficult. Knowing your weaknesses, making growth and improvement, all of this is best accomplished with a professional's help. So that's where we come into play, tstprep.com. We offer all kinds of packages for your, different budget constraints or time schedules. We've got some self-study components, but we have group classes. We've got private lessons. We have classes that focus on specific skills like speaking or like writing. We have packages where you can get support in a number of skills, multiple skills. So invest in your future. You can go to TST Prep right now and you can download the guide to TOEFL Speaking 26 Plus. You're going to find that our website's got free resources. We want to help you. That's why we put these videos out on YouTube. That's why we have the free materials on our website. We're trying to give you as much support as possible. But, the best kind of support is going to be that personalized attention and the feedback that you can get from working with a TOEFL professional. So let's recap. I went over 10 speaking tips today. Here they are again on the screen. Try to keep these things in mind when you're going through your TOEFL journey. Don't sit there passively just watching video after video. Pick up your phone and record your voice. After you record your voice, have specific criteria that you use to analyze your responses. Find a study buddy, make this a collaborative effort, make it more fun and enjoyable for you. Move your hands, be emotional, be expressive. Find the best time of day and the best location for you to focus and be productive. Predetermine your introduction, and to be honest, I would also sort of structure out the rest of your response with transitional words and conclusions as well. Let the timer become your friend. Don't make it your enemy. Use it. Get comfortable with it. Take advantage of technology. Check out voice typing. Use youglish.com. And most importantly, consider investing in professional help. That's going to be, a game changer. It's going to be the big difference for you. So today I really hoped that you were able to figure out ways that you can study to save yourself time, maintain motivation, and improve your score. I want you to try to experiment with different resources to maximize the amount of information you can learn, remember, and apply on test day. Please go to tstprep.com, check out that emergency course that I mentioned. Even if you have ample time, tons of time ahead of you, the emergency course might still be a nice fit because it's going to give you the best advice, not an overwhelming amount of information. But wouldn't you want to know the best secrets to being successful in all four sections? I think that would be awesome for you. Again, my name is Jamie. I hope these videos that I've put out there for the past 2 months have been useful to you. If you like what you see and you want more, check us out, tstprep.com. We're here to help you get your TOEFL score as quickly and easily as possible. Thanks for watching and have an awesome day. Enjoy your TOEFL experience. Bye.